welcome to our early April meeting. Pursuant to the Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law of 1975, this meeting notice was sent to the Asbury Park Press on April 2nd, 2025, and was duly advertised in the Asbury Park Press on April 7th. All municipal clerks for the towns, the boroughs within the regional district have been duly notified, and the requirements for this notice was met on April 7th, 2025. Please join Antonio and I in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Scott, any changes to the executive agenda?
Yes, Mr. President. In addition to the items that were noted on the agenda that was pre-printed prior to tonight, the board also discussed an exception number 3, the student suspension report, an exception number 4, FREA negotiations, and exception number 7, the referendum and fiscal year 2026 budget legislation.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the March 13th, 2025 regular meeting?
I'll offer.
Ms. Higley?
Second.
God.
Any discussion, board? Not hearing any discussion, roll call?
Mr. Astilla?
Yes.
Ms. Bruno? Mrs. Campiello?
Yes.
Mrs. Butcher Farkas?
Yes.
Mrs. Higley?
Yes.
Mrs. Lively?
Yes.
Mr. McCobb?
Yes.
Mr. Messinger?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Thank you.
Reminder, communications are on file in the board secretary's office. Dr. Hazel, are you ready for your superintendent report?
I am. Thank you, Mr. Bruno. Thank you, Antonio, for being here this evening.
You're welcome.
This evening, there's a resolution on the agenda to modify this school year's district calendar. We were very lucky. We did not have any snow days this year. I know Mr. Verdoni is here. He was very busy with a lot of ice, but we didn't have any snow days. So we are looking to close the district, actually give back 2 days, and close on Friday, May 23rd, and Tuesday, May 27th. We're heading into spring break on April 14th, and we'll be back on Tuesday, April 22nd. This evening, we actually have 2 presentations, but first up will be Mr. Mendez for our annual report of Phase 1 of the SSDS. That's the Student Safety Data Sheets. Many of us know it as the Violence and Vandalism Report from many years ago, but we'll be presenting the first phase of data, which is the first part of the school year, dated from September to December of this school year. Thanks, Mr. Mendez.
Thanks, Dr. Hazel. So like Dr. Hazel said, this is phase 1 of 2 phases. The second phase will be from January to June of this school year, which will report out in the summer. So starting with the first group of information here, I am happy to report that almost all of our numbers, most of our numbers went down as compared to last year's phase 1, and I'll compare those numbers for you with each category. So you can see up here, this is violence, vandalism, weapons, substance abuse, HIV confirmed, and HIV alleged. The state uses HIV alleged instead of non-confirmed. It just means the HIV was alleged and wasn't confirmed as an HIV. So here you have 14 violence incidents. Last year at this time we had 20, so we're down there. Vandalism, we're the same. We had 1, and we had 1 last time, last phase, 1. This year for weapons, we had 2. That's up. We had 0 phase 1 of last year. Substance abuse, we had 15, and last year phase 1 we had 23. So we're down a lot there. These next 2 numbers were down substantially. So we had 28 HIV confirmed this year, and last year phase 1 we had 45. And the alleged HIVs, we only had 5 in phase 1. We had 27 last year. Okay. So this slide breaks down violence a little bit into the separate categories. All right, so simple assault, we had 5 of them. Last phase 1, we had 6, so we're down 1 there. Sexual contact, we had 0. Last year, phase 1, we had 1. Sexual assaults, we're at 0. We were at 0 last year as well. Fights, we only had 4 this phase 1. Last phase 1, we had 9, so we're down substantially there as well. Okay. Okay, vandalism and weapons. So damage to property, we're at 0, just as we were last phase 1. False public alarm, we had 1. Last phase 1, we had 0, so we're up 1 there. Theft, we had 0. Last phase 1, we had 1. Trespassing, we're the same at 0 as we were last time. Again, the weapons, as I stated on the previous slide, we were 2 up from 0 last year. Obviously, we had no assaults with a weapon, and we didn't have any assaults with that last year either. Okay. So substance abuse, we had 11 confirmed substance use, down from 13 last year's phase 1. We had 6 possessions this phase 1. Last phase 1, we had 13, so we're down 7 there. Sale and distribution and refused exam, we're at 0, and we were at 0 last phase 1. Possession of drug paraphernalia, last phase 1, we were at 6. This, you'll notice we're at 0, so we're down there as well. So this next slide just shows the substances that unfortunately the students were using. It's all marijuana. We had no other substances. Last phase we had 12 marijuana. This one we have 11. And then all the others are at 0, just like they were last time. And then the last slide here is HIV, as we discussed already. Confirmed HIV, we're down to 28 from 45 last phase 1. We're down to 5 alleged HIVs from 27, so an overall total of 33 in this phase 1 compared to 72 last phase 1. So down substantially, and that's a tribute to the principals and the assistant principals in the building, just building their culture and climate, and really, and the kids too, really getting into it, and you know, I don't want to say fixing, but doing a better job. You know, I want to put the numbers into perspective too. When we talk about 1, 2, 5, 4, 6, we have almost 10,000 kids in the district. So to see these numbers this low is pretty amazing. So it's a compliment to our principals and our buildings. And these are just some of the things that they do, amongst other things in the building. So, is there any questions about the data?
Could you just clarify what the weapons were?
Nice. Yep. Nice.
Those numbers are unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been around for a while, even as an employee. I mean, congratulations, principals, assistant principals, government alcohol counselors. I mean, that's a lot of work. And to see those numbers for a school the size of 10,000 students, amazing. So congratulations. Keep up the good work. I don't want to jinx anybody, but it's great. Thank you.
We'll have
Oh, I
phase
just
2
have one
in the
question.
summer.
The simple assault, like, what would that be?
It's like, you know, the best way I can describe it is a kid walks up to another kid and punches him.
Okay, elbow and,
Punches him with the
right,
face or something.
right,
like
right,
that.
okay,
It's not a fight.
right,
You know.
thank you.
Any other questions? Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mendez. Yep, Mr. Bernoni, if you could get the lights, thank you. This evening also, our business administrator, Mr. Farrar, is going to have a presentation as well, just to kind of step through the budget situation for the Freehold Regional High School District and a tax levy incentive program that is available for eligible districts, Freehold Regional being one of them in New Jersey. So tonight, we really have a very important, overview and discussion regarding our personal budget situation. And really, we will also be outlining the fiscal landscape of the Freehold Regional High School District. In our district, we just don't plan out for 1 year. Our scope is looking out for a multitude of years to ensure that we've got everything that we need for our students and our staff. This district prides itself on fiscal responsibility. The administration and the Board of Education, we have been excellent stewards of our budgets. Our hope was that after the S2 years, there was going to be a new funding formula that would provide us with additional aid to districts to get them closer to adequacy. There's always been much talk in Trenton about revising the formula or starting over again with a new formula. That has not happened for the planning of the budget for next school year, fiscal 26. Through the years of S2, our state aid has been substantially cut. Mr. Farrar will actually go through those numbers with us. But in fiscal year 19, our district received approximately $50 million in state aid. Now for fiscal year 26, we receive approximately $29 million. A substantial cut over these 7 years, and again, all of us know, right, facing rising costs and inflation. Even for next year's budget, our state aid was cut by $916,000. Year after year, the state aid cuts have negatively impacted our budget, and one of the main areas that has suffered the most is our buildings and our facilities. We have not had an opportunity to invest in them the way we would have wanted to. Each year, we have had to cut staff proportionally to enrollment to close our budget gap. We have basically exhausted this option moving forward as enrollment looks to be flat in the coming years. No help, no answers from Trenton. 2% on the tax levy does not close our budget gap as the costs of services and goods exceed 2%. Year over year, we continue to face a deficit, and we anticipate a deficit as we enter into fiscal year 27. Last school year, for fiscal year 25, we had the ability to increase the tax levy by $10 million. Still, with that, we had a deficit in our budget for fiscal year 26 in our planning. Back in 2016, our budget was supported through state aid by 26%. Now, 15% of our budget is supported through state aid. So again, more going to, we don't know where it's coming from, but now, falls on, our constituents. Myself, this administration, and the board have discussed plans for a large-scale referendum. We are looking to plan for that for November of 25. It's our only option. The referendum would include the immediate and necessary work for our facilities: mechanical engineering and plumbing, climate control, security, and the modernization of educational spaces. This work is paramount, it's imperative, and it must be done. That referendum doesn't have that planning for that referendum with our architects has no bells and whistles. It's the necessary work for our buildings to operate and function safely for our staff and students. Tonight, through the presentation, you're going to see firsthand the evidence of some of the failing mechanical systems that need our attention. The DOE has enabled select districts, including Freehold Regional High School District, to apply for a tax levy incentive aid program if you meet a certain criteria. I know you've heard this for years and years. Our district is spending below adequacy, and we're in a community where the tax levy is below the local fair share. That means the amount that the state of New Jersey expects a district to raise through local property taxes based on local property values and residents' income. And that the district has exhausted all eligible adjustments and bank cap, meaning the district has explored and utilized all available funding options. This program allows the Freehold Regional High School District to submit an application to raise the tax levy up to the state-determined, what they deem adequacy, and qualify for state aid, 5% of the increased levy up to $1 million. Under this program, and you'll see a board resolution this evening, that Freehold Regional is eligible to generate an additional 30+ million through local taxes and receive that $1 million in this tax levy incentive aid from the state. We have reviewed our budgets, and tonight there's a resolution requesting and seeking the board's approval to increase expenditures by $20 million. An increase on the tax levy of $19 million plus the tax levy incentive of $1 million. We all know that if something didn't change, drastic cuts and changes of how Freehold Regional District operates would be at the forefront. Freehold Regional would not be the same district that we all know it is. The time has come. We need to ensure that we can address our facility concerns and have the ability to balance our budget year over year with some level of predictability. So Mr. Farrar, our BA, is going to discuss our plan, review the options that are before us. As I said, the submission of this application does require the board's approval to apply for this additional revenue. If the plan was approved and voted by the board, we would do this in lieu of our referendum. We would utilize the funds for the same purposes we were anticipating for our referendum. Again, the highest priority needs for our district: boilers, univentilators, educational spaces, and ensuring we can facilitate our instructional program. This will be fully outlined, tonight. Our administrative team, myself and the central office team, all of the principals, we appreciate our district, our Board of Education, our local community officials for their time, their efforts, and thoughtfulness as we go through the budget planning process. And truly appreciate the support of the greater Freehold Regional High School community during a very challenging time. Mr. Farrar, I'm going to turn it over to you for all the specifics.
Thank you, Dr. Hazel. So I just want to kind of start off by thanking the admin team, the board, for us to be able to have this presentation and have this engagement in this dialogue and as we kind of explore this option. And like Dr. Hazel said, this is just one option. There is no specific commitment tonight other than just to submit the application and seeing the district's kind of eligibility. So the main reason why we're here and specifically doing this presentation is because over the last couple of weeks, the DOE kind of released some information as it pertains to this tax levy incentive program. And just to kind of give a little bit of background, going back to the funding formula of 2008, and I'm not going to rehash a lot of the similar points that Mr. Boyce
Good. That's good.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mendez. So Mr. Boyce, obviously for the last several years, has kind of reviewed the impact of S2, the funding formula, and obviously the greater kind of decisions and long-term impact on the district. So for the most part, the S2 legislation was adopted in 2018, and the intention there was to, over the course of time, to kind of shift the liability from the state coffer to the local taxpayer, especially for districts that are seeing kind of a decline in enrollment, change in equalized value. So, like Dr. Hazel said, The adequacy budget is the level of funding a school district needs to provide a very efficient education. And as identified by the DOE this year, the district is $30.3 million under adequacy. The local fair share is the amount of revenue to be raised by the local taxpayer. So that number is approximately $69.6 million. So in both of those metrics, the state is basically saying that the local taxpayer can afford more. And as we've seen in terms of kind of the community, and as we kind of look, you know, and appreciate the importance and the significance of the regional district to the 10,000 kids that we service, as well as roughly the 200,000 you know, residents of the municipality over the 200 square miles, we know that that is not something that is taken lightly. And whether it be Mr. Boyce prior to me, this board, myself, Dr. Hazel, we understand that these decisions are not made in a vacuum, and as a result, we need to be able to kind of explore different alternatives, explain and be transparent with both the board and the public as everybody kind of makes these decisions. And like Dr. Hazel said, you know, as we look at, this is just kind of a lab line for tonight, but as we look at kind of the state aid over the last 10 years or so, you know, in FY16, we basically had $51.4 million of state aid, and now we're down to projected 29.6. So, like Dr. Hazel said, and just kind of stole a little bit of my thunder and some of my data points, right? But in FY16, the state aid that state aid made up 26.5% of our budget, and now, or most recently in 25, it's close to 15%. So, and the question then becomes is that during these years, especially the S2, what we call the S2 years, which is the biggest decline, and it kind of looks like a little roller coaster. This is not a roller coaster that the district has appreciated being on, right? Mm-hmm. And so the decisions that Dr. Sampson and now Dr. Hazel, Mr. Boyce, myself, the admin team have had to make over the course of these years have been significant. And some of them have been very upfront and visual to the average taxpayer, the average parent, like increased class sizes, like the condemnation of our tennis courts. And then there's other stuff that is not as evident, stuff that's behind the scenes, pooling on the roofing, windows that are 40 years old, boilers that are going. So those are the things, like Dr. Hazel said, in terms of kind of the district's kind of long-term kind of impact. When we look at, you know, what impacts a student's classroom and the decisions that were made, they tried to be as far away from the classroom as possible. And I don't, you know, I would have done it exactly the same way. So from that standpoint, just like we have our own homes, we have a boiler, we have a hot water heater, we have an air conditioner, a roof. Just as an example, the unit ventilators that I'll go into in a little while as a potential kind of item that needs to be addressed based upon the Spiesel assessment from several months ago. We have 349 of those. Those are just the ones that need to be addressed. So when we look at these numbers and the impact and the maintenance of effort, they're significant, and obviously it's critical that we kind of look at it from that standpoint. So moving on in terms of kind of just the maintenance of effort. So over the last roughly 15 years or so, the district has averaged about $3.3 million, which is this blue line in terms of just maintenance as well as capital improvements. And so for the most part, as we look at kind of industry standards, whether it be, you know, private sector, whether it be more tailored to education, Governor Accountability Office, the ASBO International, National Council of Schools, those folks all kind of estimate that the investment in facilities should be somewhere between 1.5 and 4% of your replacement cost. So for us, just as an example, most recently our insurance estimate in terms of replacement cost is approximately $421 million. So that level of effort probably should have been closer to $11 million over that same, you know, 15-year time period. And like I said, you know, in talking to professionals that were here before, and obviously working with Mr. Verdoni and his team now, the infusion of that money, or the lack thereof, over the last 15 years has made a significant dent, right? And like I said, just like not much different than in our own homes when the boiler goes and the hot water heater goes and the roof goes at the same time. That's basically the situation that we're in right now. And like I said, the average person, you walk by the buildings are clean, the buildings are maintained to the best of our ability, but there's things that are breaking that obviously we need to kind of consider. And the concern is, whether it be a referendum like Dr. Hazel said, or whether it be another path that systematically addresses these issues, that gap will continue to get wider. And that's something that we need to kind of reconsider. So, some of the examples, unit ventilators are pretty common. Those are things that obviously just about every classroom has it. Gym floor, the gaps are starting to widen in certain buildings like Freehold Township and Marlboro. We can't stand the gym floors anymore. So it's not like a situation where you can stand in one more time and just print the graphics on and just recode it. You're basically down at the tongue and groove already. You're starting to see those gaps appear in between the boards. That obviously just happens over the time. And you know, at the end of the day, that facility assessment that Spiesel did for the district kind of came up with a number of roughly, you know, over $600 million. And obviously that's not going to be anything that we would want to kind of put on the back of the taxpayers in terms of those significant numbers. But the reality is that we have, just in terms of interior building space, we have over 1.4 million square feet. You know, and that's just Marlboro by itself has 264. And the reason I bring up Marlboro is because in this plan that we're working together with, as we're kind of fine-tuning the potential referendum, there's roofing on that plan. And that roofing is roughly 91,000 square feet, right? So if we take the 91,000 square feet, add roughly, you know, 20 or 30,000 square feet that were part of the 2021 referendum, there's still a gap. That means that at some point in the future, we're going to have to go back to the taxpayers, even if this referendum kind of plays out. So moving on, you know, these are a couple of other examples. On the right-hand side is a condensing boiler. Back, I want to say 20 years ago or so, there was an ESIP program that allowed us to kind of replace some of our old cast iron boilers with these newer, more efficient condensing boilers that, as you can see, watermarks are not normal. HVAC condenser unit on a roof, rusted, that's not normal. And the concern is that at some point, and we just recently had it at Freehold Township, thankfully we're kind of coming up to the end of heating season, but basically 2 of these condensing boilers basically went down just around the same time. And one of them had to be basically scrapped to be able to fill the other one to get the second one up and running. This is not, you know, as a superintendent that I used to work with basically says, this is not how we run an airline, right? We have to be diligent, we have to be strategic about these decisions. So back to the concern about the ongoing maintenance and the maintenance of effort, and like I said in that, as you saw in that slide, and that gap is going to get bigger. If we haven't been able to kind of maintain that effort over the last 10 or 15 years, what makes us think that in a 2% tax levy cap environment that we're going to be able to do it going forward? That is critical to this discussion. So basically, like Dr. Hazel said, on the agenda tonight, there's a resolution to basically have the board approve the submission of an application. Like I mentioned before, we're still in the works with the referendum option and exploring all those steps. And at the same time, this tax levy incentive program. So I'm going to kind of give a little bit of an outline of what this is all about. So at the governor's budget address in February, basically one of the lines that was in the proposal and the printout that came in afterward was about $20 million towards this tax levy incentive program. So unlike last year, where there was very specific legislation that allowed districts to go over the 2% tax levy. This is going to be part of the Appropriations Act. In essence, the state budget that gets approved every June in preparation for the bond. So the component of this is this state matching, all right? And the state basically is saying, hey, for districts that, whether you took advantage of the program last year or not, if you're still below adequacy and you're still below local fair share, we'll allow you to go over your 2% tax levy, okay, up to your adequacy number, which for us, like I mentioned before, is $30.3 million, okay? And in providing incentive, a little bit of a carrot on this, is that we're going to give you 5 cents on every dollar that you go to your taxpayers, up to $1 million cap. So as we kind of look at the potential kind of implications of the referendum versus the tax levy incentive program, I'm just going to go through some of them. So the referendum, like I said, at this point, based upon trying to kind of refine the number, and it would probably be somewhere in the ballpark of around $240 to $250 million. The priorities would be MEP, which is mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, security cameras, HVAC, including air conditioning, science lab renovations, flooring, lighting, drop ceiling, all critical components, because most of these science labs haven't been really touched in any significant manner over the last 20 or 25 years. But the critical component of this, about doing the referendum, is that even if it gets approved by the community, it still lacks a systemic kind of opportunity to maintain this level of effort going forward, right? And this kind of refers back to my point before to say, hey, if we haven't been able to find money in our budget to adequately kind of keep up with that maintenance and those capital improvements, what makes us think that we're going to be able to do it consistently going forward in these 2% tax levy world? So the program, the tax levy incentive aid program, is, like I said, it would be through the appropriation. The DOE is actually managing it, and it requires us to submit an application. And like I said, the board resolution for consideration by the board tonight is literally just to submit the application. But the commitment, and this is a commitment that the administration and the board have to be prepared to make to the community, right? Which is, hey, we're going to set aside $12 million of that, whatever that dollar amount is. So over that same 20-year period, we basically have a similar investment to the referendum. And in exchange for that, within the next 10 years or even more, we probably won't have to go back out for a referendum to kind of to address these needs. For FY26, the application would be submitted primarily with those 3 subcategories. Facilities, obviously the biggest chunk, student supports, and then staffing. The other component of this is that the application timeline is expected to have kind of a response sometime by the end of the month, last week of April. And the intention there is so that districts that do get approved for this application have the opportunity to discuss it in public, at the public hearing, and if the board chooses to kind of take advantage of it and go from there. And like I said, the commitment is that in the component of this on an annual basis is the investment in the facilities, the privatization, the sequencing of projects, and the sustainability. And just as an example, the tentative budget that we submitted to the county had a replacement gym floor for Marlboro. But most recently, and based upon some previous experiences and situations, we have a roof leak on a roof above the gym floor that is out of warranty. So what that basically tells me is that I'm not going to recommend investing $350,000 or $400,000 on replacing that gym floor when there's a risk that there's going to be water on it, and now I'm going to have to create a patch again. So this is the sequencing component that we wouldn't have as much flexibility with the referendum that we would have in this program. And like I said, in terms of the commitment of the board, the issue is that moving forward, right, every year we would do a 2-year lookout. And that would basically make sure that everybody understood what the intent of these dollars were for and how we would be best utilizing and prioritize these schedules. So, in essence, if the application gets approved and consequently the board approves the adoption of the funds into the FY26 budget, in FY27 we would commit having a tool at least 12.2 available for projects. So from a dollars and cents standpoint, how does this pan out from a taxpayer? And I'll get to that in a second. The only major other difference between the two is the financially, the referendum, if all the applications are approved, the district would see a debt service aid in somewhere between 30 and 40% of the dollars, right? Depending on what the project is, the DOE has very specific kind of standards on that. In exchange for that, right, the interest saved by going on that program is roughly $119 million. So you know, as we talked about in finance, I shared that at the preliminary kind of gut feeling when this program was announced March 28th, and then basically they said, hey, if you're interested in doing this, you have to basically submit an application by April 14th. At face value, we thought that that number was going to be dramatically different from a financial impact to the taxpayer. But as you'll see in the next slides, the tax rate changes are not all that different. The major other component that relates to this tax levy incentive program is the emphasis on a thorough and efficient education. And as most of you might kind of guess, that has changed a little bit over the years with the Abbott decisions. So the application for this year has to be targeting those components. And then finally, although we would be bypassing potentially this debt service aid, the last component of that is that periodically the state does issue regular operating district grants, which basically would allow us to aggregate a certain number of projects that we would be able to get some kind of state funding for. So the net loss is not roughly that, you know, $7 million as shown. It's likely that it's going to be much less than that. So what you see here is basically 3 options that the board might choose to consider, you know, in a few weeks when we have the public hearing. The first option, option A, the first column, is literally just taking the FY25 tax levy, increasing that by 2%. Option B, the middle column, is that same 2% on top of the FY25 plus the referendum. And these numbers are the estimated numbers of what that payback period would be over the next 20 years. Year 1 is a little bit lower because typically you don't have a principal payment, it's just an interest payment. But for years 2 all the way through 20, basically it's around $12.9 million of debt service. So the overall payment is around $182. And then finally, column C, or the column on the right, is 2% on the FY25 plus the $19 million. So compared to the number that you see there, the $19 million, you will notice that on the previous slide, I mentioned $20 million. Okay, and the reason for it is because it's accounting for the $1 million that the state would match. So basically what that means is that the local taxpayer would see a 19 instead of a full 20 because the state picked up that first $1 million. So those are the comparables in terms of the general tax levy, which is our operating budget, our debt service, which is the repayment of debt, and obviously the full taxes to be raised. So in terms of how this kind of compares to each municipality, we're going to take it kind of from here. So on the left-hand side in green, you see the tax rates. These are the most recent tax rates by municipality. So every year, as part of the budget submission process, we basically will approve or kind of receive a regional share spreadsheet from the DOE. And that basically takes the equalized valuation of each municipality, which is down here, right? And the enrollment. I apologize for the typo on the double and. But basically, those numbers will change. And what basically, if you look at it, is to say, hey, if there's a municipality that is worth more and is sending more kids to the district, they're going to have a responsibility that's higher than a municipality that's going to be worth less and has less kids coming to the regional district, right? So those rates are already kind of estimated based upon the most recent information available on the Monmouth County ratables. On the right-hand side, you see a table that pretty much identifies each of the municipalities and those same three options and how these numbers change based upon those three options. So, for example, if you're in Englishtown, and I'm going to pick that one because the option is the highest at the end. So if the board chooses to go up just to 2%, the impact on this tax rate right here, the 28.3, would be an increase of 2.5%. If the board adopts possibly going out for a referendum and the community supports that, then that estimate would be close to 9.9%. So consequently, the numbers after that would be roughly 13.8 if we go with the third option. So what that basically means is that you have some municipalities that throughout all three options are expected to see their overall tax rate go down, and then you have other municipalities, just because of how their proportionate share plays out, will actually see an increase. So Marlborough, which happens to be the highest in terms of kind of this area right here, right, in this third option, would potentially see an increase of just over $300 annually. So that is based upon the average assessed home. So I know that Mr. Boyce, over the course of time, they didn't necessarily kind of share that information, not because he was trying to hide anything, but because nobody has the average assessed home, right? Just like somebody says, hey, can you do it based upon $1 million? Well, some people have $1 million home and some people don't. So for the most part, the easiest thing to look at is to say, hey, if I take out my tax bill, and I look at my tax bill and I say, hey, the Friedel regional component of this is, I don't know, $2,500. Okay, I'm going to find my town. I'm going to basically say I'm going to add $2,500 plus 2.5 plus 9.9 plus 13.8, and then I'll see what those buckets actually mean to me as the individual taxpayer. So that's the estimated kind of impact on the tax rate based upon these three options. Like I said, at this point, the administration is recommending that we submit the application to DOE, see if we're eligible for it, and if so, what those dollar amounts are. And then as we prepare for the public hearing, then at that point, the board can kind of consider its options. The only other thing that I just want to kind of share, obviously the board is aware of this, with the community, we had tentatively had the public hearing scheduled for April 24th. Because we don't expect to see the determination on these applications until the week of the 28th, we're looking to kind of push back the public hearing just to make sure that we have as much information as possible so the board is making an informed decision. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over back to Mr. Bruno in case any of the board members have any questions.
Any discussion, board? Any questions? Mr. Carter? Any questions, Mr.
Yes. If the application gets submitted and if it gets approved, we're under no obligation to raise taxes, are we?
That is correct. At this point, it really just retains the board's options for the public hearing. Just not any different that at some point, probably in the summer, if we decide to go down the referendum option, the board would have to adopt a question to actually be submitted to the county for a vote in November. The one thing that I want to kind of make clear, and I hope I tried to make it clear, is that if the board entertains this option and this becomes viable, the referendum is not something that we would kind of be exploring anytime soon. It wouldn't be fair to the taxpayers, and because, like I said, the important component here is that the board and the administration commits to the community that we're going to use these dollars appropriately moving forward.
So, at the public hearing, in May, if we get our application approved, and the board would vote on the tax levy, to increase the tax levy that night.
Correct.
Okay. And then, yeah, that's all
I
right.
have a question for the board attorney. I don't understand. We're supposed to have a 2% property cap in New Jersey. And last year, they passed that legislation that gave us this big one-time exemption to raise taxes more than 2%. So how is this possibly happening?
Very good question, Mr. Messer. So, for lack of a better term, the authority for this program does not currently appear in a bill that has been proposed in either the Senate or the Assembly. It is contained within the Appropriations Act, which is, in simplest terms, the governor's proposed budget for the upcoming state fiscal year. When, because New Jersey, by law, has to have a balanced budget, when the budget is approved, if this provision is contained within the Appropriation Act, which would have to be adopted by both the Senate and the Assembly and signed into law by the governor, if that is adopted and approved, then the authority for this program would then become effective. So, for lack of a better term, the path that the powers that be have taken is a little different than the path that they took last spring for the prior program, but it would have the same full force and effect.
This is for S2 schools only.
So this program is actually a little more narrow, Mr. Bruno, and that's important to point out. It is not a program that is available to districts that just have seen state aid reductions through S2. That's one component. The other component is that the affected districts, for lack of a better term, must have taken all available steps that were available or provided to it. Meaning, the board must have exhausted any and all banked cap. That has happened here in Freehold Regional. The board must have exhausted and utilized any other waivers that existed in connection with the existing 2% property caps. Because yes, there are 2% caps, Mr. Messinger, but there are also some exceptions, very limited exceptions that districts can utilize. The biggest being, of course, health insurance costs. So Freehold Regional is one of a handful of districts. There's not a lot of districts statewide that do apply, that this would apply to, but this district is one.
Thank you. Any other discussion, board? Thank you very much. And I want to thank your staff. This meeting was only put together a couple weeks ago, and with Human Resources and the Business Department and your business department, we pulled this together in a very, very short time. 2 weeks earlier, it was not an easy task, so thank you for your hard work. Thank you. We do have a board report tonight, and it's finance. So this is finance.
Okay, well, basically, this past Monday night, essentially the entire meeting just consisted of going in a little more depth on what we've just been discussing for the past 45 minutes. I mean, I'm trying not to repeat, but I mean, I took 4 main points that I don't think were addressed as, you know, every year we're gonna have a deficit going forward. My own personal view, which I brought up at the meeting, is, you know, with this, We're essentially joining the ranks of Toms River, Jackson, Middletown, with respect to D-Day arriving at this district. And basically, when you think about it, the state average high school spends $20,000 a kid, and we spend $14,500 too. And as was mentioned earlier about being below adequacy, I don't really know what else can be done about this. So everything else was already discussed just now. So that essentially encapsulates the meeting.
Thank you. Which was only Monday night. Can't believe that was 4 months ago. Monday night. Okay, so we have no one here to speak tonight. No one in the public has signed up to speak tonight. So are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Bruno, we do have some changes. So I'm going to just read those into the record. So on G1, the approval of resignations, be it resolved that the following resignations be approved as recommended by the superintendent of schools. Michelle Stevens, special education math teacher at Malvin, effective date June 30th of 25, and years of service 13, and reason personal. G2, approval of retirement. Be it resolved that the following retirements be approved as recommended by the superintendent of schools. Kathleen Churchill, math teacher at Holzneck, and the effective date is June 30th, 2025. And for G3, approval of appointments. Be it resolved that the Freeville Regional High School District Board of Education approves the appointments for the following staff members as recommended by the superintendent of schools, contingent upon criminal history review pursuant to 218 C5, clearances and issuance appropriate certification where applicable. To the extent that any board member is in conflict due to any appointee, being a family member, his or her vote is an abstention. All certificated personnel are approved as home instructors and substitute staff for the district programs on an as-needed basis for the year in which they are appointed. The employee's name is Rebecca Hooker, special education chemistry teacher at Holzneck High School. The step guide is $73,150. Effective date of September 1st, 2025 to June 30th to 26th. And the little note at the bottom, obviously the salary reflects the 2024-25 salary guide, which is currently still being negotiated with the FRHSD. And then finally, I do have a couple of revisions to the agenda. On the current resolution for H7, there was a clarification that we needed to make to be consistent with the potential application. So I'm going to read that into the record and then highlight the change. So programmed operations in number 7, application submission, additional expenditure and tax. Incentive aid, whereas in the proposed FY26 state budget, certain districts have the opportunity to apply to the Commission of Education to increase expenditures, including an allocation of tax levy incentive aid, in order to satisfy the fair and efficient standards established pursuant to New Jersey statutes annotated 18A 7F46. Whereas the Freeport Regional High School District Board of Education is below local fair share and is spending below adequacy to be eligible to participate in this program. Whereas the Freeport Regional High School District Board of Education is eligible to increase expenditures by $30,316,605 and qualify for the tax levy incentive aid in the amount of $1 million. Whereas the Freeville Regional High School District Board of Education is requesting the approval to increase expenditures in the amount of $20,080,291 based on the following reasons: to maintain thorough and efficient education programs by, restoring the maintenance plan necessary for adequate school facilities, repairing instructional spaces, reinstating staff, and purchasing instructional material. Therefore, the Freeville Regional High School District Board of Education is approving the submission of this application. That concludes page 7, and like I said, the highlighted or change was the description related to the dollar amounts and the reasoning in paragraph 4. For H8, there is a revision So pursuant to my conversation recently with our county school business administrator, she asked that we readopt the budget for the year. So I'm not going to read the resolution specifically as it compares to the last meeting when we adopted the tentative budget. But basically the changes are in the general fund column, less anticipated revenues. The number is 46,976,262, and in the previous resolution it had a 1. And then moving over to debt service, instead of being 357,656, the previous one had 657, and then consequently below the taxes to be raised, the number was off by $1 as well, consistent with the less anticipated column. And then finally, on the capital reserve withdrawal, in the first line where it says be it resolved that the included, be it resolved that included in the general fund appropriations budget line 620 is a withdrawal from capital reserve other than capital projects, and the addition is in the estimated amount of $650,000. So that way it's consistent with the sum of those two projects, one of which I highlighted before during my presentation. $750,000. And so that concludes the changes to the agenda, Mr.
I
President.
have one question for you. Okay. If we don't have any questions, we're going to move along here. Mic problems tonight. May I have a motion to approve G1 through G11?
Motion.
Second.
Mr. Cobb, Ms. Capiello.
Any discussion, board? Not hearing any discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Acetola.
Yes.
Mrs. Capiello.
Yes.
Ms. Butcher Farkas.
Yes.
Mrs. Higley.
Yes, to abstain to G6, referring to Harold Kertesi.
Thank you. Mrs. Lavin.
Yes.
Ms. McCobb.
Yes.
Mr. Messinger.
Yes.
Mr. Bruno.
Yes.
Thank you.
Can I have
Motion's passed.
May I have a motion to approve program operations, building, transportation, and physical plan? It's H1 through H7.
Motion.
Second.
Mr. Cobb, Ms. Capiello.
Any discussion, board? Not hearing any discussion. Roll call?
Mr. Acetola.
Yes.
Mrs. Capiello.
Yes.
Ms. Butcher Farkas.
Yes, except for H7, abstain.
Thank you. Mrs. Higley.
Yes.
Mrs. Lavin.
Yes.
Ms. McCobb.
Yes.
Mr. Messinger.
Yes.
Mr. Bruno.
Yes.
Thank you.
The motion's passed.
May I have a motion to take educational programs and administration, which is J1 through K5?
Motion.
Motion, Mrs. McCann, okay.
Mr. Cobb,
McCann, I heard her.
Second.
second, Ms. Capiello.
Capiello. Any discussion, board? Not hearing any discussion, roll call?
Mr. Acetola.
Yes.
Mrs. Capiello.
Yes on everything except, excuse me, on K1, I abstain from Jeremy Braverman, and K4 to Dr. Hazel.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Butcher Farkas.
Yes.
Mrs. Higley.
Yes, but I abstain also K1 to Jeremy Braverman and K4 to Dr. Hazel.
Thank you. Mrs. Lavin.
Yes.
Ms. McCobb.
Yes.
Mr. Messinger.
Yes.
Mr. Bruno.
Yes.
Thank you.
All motions passed.
Anyone has old business to discuss? I do want to thank the staff at Marlboro High School and the guidance department for pulling off an incredible college fair. Really well done. They're always like something to look forward to, the college fairs, and I think we had over 100 colleges that night. Yeah, more maybe? Yeah. So, but thank you for hosting that. And any other old business? Any new business? Not hearing.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Not hearing any new business. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second. I think she broke Mr.
Remember Miss Kathy on the street there, all right, all in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned.
Whatever my last name.
8:30.